without any further ado, I'd like to, let me just see really quick, first of all, how many people have questions so we can kind of gauge how we pace this. No imminent questions?
Don't be shy.
Well, let me start then. Christine, let me just start with you really quick. Maybe you could just, I don't know that many people in the audience totally understand what rotational grazing is yet, so maybe you could give us some insight on that really quick.
No problem. So the traditional, conventional way of grazing is just let your cows roam over thousands of acres, and then go collect them, go try to find them 3 months later, and hope that they haven't eaten up all of your good grass. And what rotational grazing is you actually fence your land into separate paddocks, and you move your cows group by group at a time and rotate them throughout the land so you always know where they are. And you're also timing how much time they get on the land. So they are bunched up together, not uncomfortably, but enough so that they're kind of competing with each other on how much grass they get to eat, which means that they don't pick. So they don't get picky, and they just eat down to a certain level, and then a few hours later or a day later you move them to the next paddock. And rotational grazing is used by about 5% of the most data and innovation-driven sustainable farmers here. It's used by 100% of New Zealand and a lot of Australia as well.
Great, thank you so much. Justin, real quick question about waste in general. You mentioned this briefly in your presentation, but I wondered, I don't know if you have the numbers on the top of your head or the breakdown, but when we're throwing food waste away, what are we actually throwing away? I mean, break that down for us. I mean, we're not, if you throw away an apple core or a whole apple, better, what are you actually throwing away?
So, are you talking about the landfill aspect?
No, I mean from a kind of a full production cycle, kind of what all goes into the production of that apple, essentially.
Oh yeah. So yes, you're talking about water. You're talking about every natural resource that it takes to grow that apple. You're throwing that away, and you're also throwing away that time. So like some of these farmers, they're out there harvesting these apples and then getting to the market. You're throwing away all the transportation that it took to get that apple to where you're at. So the environmental damage from food waste is extraordinary. And one of the biggest impacts of food waste is actually the methane gas. So when all this stuff goes into our landfills, it then gives off methane gas, and methane gas is way more carbon emissions than fossil fuels. So it's a huge impact, and actually cities like Boston right now are actually changing laws because they don't have any room left in the landfills for all of this wasted food. So they're actually creating incentives and so forth because they realize this is one of the biggest problems that they face. And I would say that food waste is actually one of the biggest problems we face as humanity right now.
Yeah, definitely a huge issue. I would add that when you throw all the organic waste that ends up in landfill, you lose all of the kind of organic value of that waste. It doesn't do anything in landfill. It loses all its value. Whereas if you compost it or if you repurpose it or whatever, you're kind of accessing the value, the inherent value of that organic waste. So I've been working with a company here in the area that some of you might know, and they're actually going to be on the panel before. I mean, that definitely is a growing space, whether it be hydroponic or soil-based, as this one is here, and you can reduce a lot of the resource inputs that are necessary by doing indoor closed system ag. It's a growing trend in Japan as well. All the big electronics companies, Toshiba and Panasonic, they all have kind of excess capacity, old manufacturing capacity that they've converted to LED growth, hydroponic or soil-based farms, and they all actually have branded produce in stores now as well. It's hard to scale, but certainly there's a huge opportunity there, I think. And then the home production, I think, huge opportunity.
Yeah, this one person that I really love is Caleb from MIT City Farm, and he's exploring, basically saying that, hey, we got to feed 9 billion people, so in cities across the world, you're going to see, gardens hanging out people's windows. And so we're going to have to grow food in the cities as well as outside the cities. So basically your big commodity crops like corn and soy and wheat will be grown outside the cities and trucked in, but then people will be having home gardens everywhere you look. And that's one of the ways we need to feed all these people. So that's part of what we envision, with Hummingbird, is this ability to grow food out of your home and share that with other people. And we also see that as a path to more sustainable agriculture. So 4% of our agriculture is organic. We want to increase that. Most people, if they're growing out of their homes, are not going to use genetically modified seeds or litter it with pesticides. So it's a good way to increase sustainable agriculture too.
Absolutely. Some of you might be familiar with Pasona's new headquarters in Tokyo. It uses a green wall. And the CEO of Pasona actually contacted us about this company here, wanting to maybe install a productive, it's Pasona, it's a human relations or a human resource company, right? But they're interested in creating an actual productive wall on the side of their headquarters building where you're producing leafy green produce. So I think there's a lot of different applications there, and it's going to take a lot of design genius to kind of figure out how to do that in our urban areas. But when you look at population growth, and 80% of that population growth to 2050 taking place in our urban centers, obviously, moving the point of production closer to the point of consumption seems to make sense. Here in the United States, the average mouthful of food travels 1,200 miles, right? So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but I think a lot of opportunity there. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I guess I'd just end with one really quick question and just get one-word response from all of you guys. Obviously, you're very, very passionate people. You want to have viable business models, but obviously your investment right now is very much driven by your passion. So let me just ask you a lofty softball question here. Moving towards that 2040, 2050 population spike, how are we going to do that? Are we going to be able to address the need? Yes or no?
I want to say yes.
Good answer.
We better.
My life stand starts with anything is possible.
It's all about the soil.
Nice. And I would add to that the proverbial embrace constraints. So thank you so much for that wonderful panel. These guys are great and they're doing great things. So let's give them a round of applause. I just point you really quick to the next upcoming Keizai Society events on the 3rd of October. There's the Oktoberfest Happy Hour Networking event, which is great. I guess because people drink. And then on the 20th of November, our next forum, which will be wearable sensors and the future of fitness and healthcare. Obviously another emerging, growing space. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.